So, over the past month or so, I've made maybe 3 videos on this channel, and they've all been about a specific girl, a girl who is no longer in my life. And believe me when I tell you that the fact that I'm making videos about that girl and that situation when I am literally living a whole new life with a completely different woman across the world definitely feels just as weird to me as it probably seems to you. But this is how I process things. I process things through creative endeavors, through making videos like this, through writing poetry, through writing prose, like I am for my book Ego Death. And I think over the past 2 months that I've been working on this book and just really looking at the story with the vantage point of being 5 or 6 years older and having a lot more maturity and, more importantly, experience with romance and life in general, I've come to a very harrowing conclusion about that situation. And I've also realized that that conclusion applies to some of the other areas of my life that haven't really gone the way I anticipated them going, at least for the long term. And that conclusion is that sometimes in life, there is nothing you can do. So I don't know if you noticed, but I'm wearing this necklace right here, and whether you can see it or not on camera, this is a fleur-de-lis pendant. The reason why I chose to get a fleur-de-lis pendant for this necklace is to remind myself of where I come from, which is Louisiana. Southern Louisiana, to be specific. Now, I didn't really grow up in Southern Louisiana. I spent most of my childhood in Texas. The reason why is because of Hurricane Katrina. Okay, I was a Katrina refugee, for lack of a better term. And I didn't lose everything I had, but my family and I had to significantly downgrade our lives in the wake of Katrina. And I've kind of come to realize that that narrative, the framework for that narrative of just overnight things changing for the worse, I've sort of replayed that narrative in different components of my life, with one of the best examples being the situation with the girl that I talked about in Soul Shock. And that's why in my third book, Her Flowers, I draw that connection between Katrina and her, because really those situations played out in a very, very similar manner. But I digress. The fact that we essentially lost our home in Hurricane Katrina wasn't really our fault. Now, could we argue that maybe my parents shouldn't have gotten a house in an area that was prone to hurricanes? Sure, you can maybe argue that. Granted, that's where my dad grew up, and that was my mom's first landing spot in the US. So that was their comfort zone. So it makes sense from an emotional and sentimental standpoint. But logically, looking back on it, it might not have been the best idea. Hence why after Katrina, we left instead of just fixing the house and staying in it. But even if they were partially culpable in how that situation unfolded, in the sense that they chose to live in that area, they did not cause Katrina. Katrina was out of their control. They didn't just press a button and fucking spawn one of the worst natural disasters in recent history. It wasn't their fault, and it wasn't my fault as a 5-year-old that suddenly I went from having my own room and a walk-in closet and all of these different things, a bicycle, all of these Power Wheels toys and things like that, to suddenly sleeping in the living room of an apartment, not having any privacy whatsoever, not being able to have a bike or a pet, not having the ability to pause and record my favorite TV shows because now we can't put a satellite on the apartment, things of that nature. That wasn't my fault. None of that was my fault. There was nothing I could have done, and there was nothing my parents could have done to have changed the outcome of that situation. Once we were in that house, that was always going to be the outcome. Now, granted, I am very, very glad that I grew up where I grew up. I grew up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, if you didn't know. I'm very glad to have grown up there instead of Louisiana, because I just visited Louisiana this past year, 2025, and nothing has really changed since we left. Okay, that is an area that, just like I talk about in Her Flowers, is content with staying afloat. Whereas the area that I grew up in, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, for all of its faults, is an area that surfs the wave of expansion, so to speak. And I think that has had a very, very prominent effect on how I approach life, with my constant need to expand and grow and seek out greener pastures, so to speak. I could not control Katrina, nor could my parents. And in the same way, I've run through all the scenarios, run all the retroactive calculations in my head with the situation with that girl. And believe me when I tell you that this has been a multi-year long process of me just randomly in the middle of the night, damn, what if I had just said that instead of what I actually said? Or what if I had texted her this instead of that? What if I had hugged her a little bit tighter? What if I had brought this up in conversation? Right? And you've seen some of that over the past few videos. You've seen that retroactive analysis of me trying to map out where the fuck I went wrong. Now, mind you, I'm grateful for where I am and who I'm with. I'm glad to be with the person that I'm with. But at the same time, I liken it to having pets. If you lose a pet as a kid, you might get another pet. And it's kind of crazy for me to compare girlfriends to pets, but if you have a better analogy, leave it in the comments. This is the best that I have right now. If you lose a pet as a kid, and then you grieve the loss of that pet, and then a few years later, you get another pet, the hole is still there. You're still moving with that grief, and a lot of times the grief affects the way that you love the new pet. And I'm speaking from experience with that, because that's another thing that I went through when I was a kid. We had these dogs, Bart and Lance. Actually, we had multiple pets that, for one reason or another, we just had to get rid of. And, I mean, looking back on it, that was very, very traumatic for me as a kid, even more so than Katrina, because just last year, I know I'm kind of getting off topic here, but just stay with me because I'm going to tie all this shit together. Just last year, I was at my parents' house with my girlfriend, and I stumbled on some old pictures of my dogs, Bart and Lance, from when I was around 8 or 9 years old. And it caught me so off guard, but I actually cried looking at those pictures. That shit broke me down, and mind you, I'm 25 years old. I'm about to be 26. That shit broke me down. That's the only time my girlfriend has ever seen me cry. And it fucked me up that all these years later, I still felt the same pain that I did as a 9-year-old in the shelter. My eyes are about to start watering right now just talking about the shit, but as a 9-year-old, having to give them away. And it wasn't my fault. There was nothing I could have done in that situation. But that's just what it was. We had to give them away for reasons that I could not control. And so, in the same way, in my analysis, in me reliving and rehashing the events of meeting with the girl first, and then interacting with her, and then just kind of watching her fade away and not being able to do shit about it, I've come to that same conclusion that there was nothing I could do. There was nothing I could do about that. And that right there is maybe the most painful conclusion that I ever could have come to. Because I think I found a lot of comfort in believing that I had messed up somewhere. I had said something wrong. I had done something wrong. I did something that gave her the ick, that rubbed her the wrong way. And she just wasn't feeling me because of that. Cool, that's something I can correct moving forward. I can correct that. What I couldn't correct was the idea that she was actually telling me the truth. She wasn't ready for a relationship, and it had nothing to do with me. It had absolutely nothing to do with me. There was nothing I could have done to have influenced the outcome of that situation. I even thought about, man, what if I just accepted being friends with her and tried to play the long game? But it's like, bro, at a certain point, where would that have led to? Where would that have led to? Because I'm not going to lie. I'm keeping it real with you. I stalked her social medias for years after that because I just couldn't make sense of it. I was trying to find some kind of proof that she just wasn't feeling me, and maybe she had found somebody else and they were in a relationship, and once I'd find that proof, I could just move on because I knew, okay, she just didn't really like me like I thought she did. But I never found it. I never found that proof, and it fucked me up even more. That's why eventually I just stopped doing that shit, because I was like, bro, I can't keep doing this to myself. I'm saying this to say that even if I had tried to play the long game with her, she probably still to this day isn't ready for a relationship. Evidently, I am, because I'm in one. I've been in one for a few years now, but the point is, there was nothing I could have done. There was nothing I could have done. Here's another example. Let's step away from dating and love and romance for a second. YouTube. Okay, as I film this video, I don't know how many subscribers I have on this channel. Maybe, I think 300 something? Low 300s? I have another channel with, I think, 180,000 subscribers. And I've gone through various cycles on that channel of ascension followed by a steep decline, or I guess in modern vernacular, a fall off. I've fallen off multiple times. And I remember in around 2022, the start of the year, I had just hit 100K. I was making the most money I'd ever made in my life, pulling probably $5,000 a month, give or take, depending on my upload schedule or whatever, and how many sponsorships I secured for the month. And I was feeling myself. I was like, bro, I made it. I'm good. But then as the year went on, it seemed like my views were just steadily declining. And all of a sudden, sponsors started to pull out, or they started to offer lower rates. And before I knew it, that 5,000 had turned into 2,000. And when I reviewed that period of my life and the stress, the immense financial stress that I endured during that time, I used to think in terms of the shit that I bought. I was like, bro, maybe it was a bad idea to move out of my parents' house and get my own apartment. Maybe it was a bad idea to go and get a BMW. And to be fair, it probably was a bad idea to do these things. But let's say I had never done those things at all. Let's say I had simply stayed with my parents and saved up every penny that I ever made on YouTube. Well, first of all, a lot of that money would have went to taxes anyways. So that's kind of a moot point. But let's just say I would have more money saved up than I currently do, which I'm good. I'm fine right now. Hence why I don't really need to upload a whole lot of videos, and I have time to be working on a book that I don't even know if anyone's going to buy. Really doing it for my own just personal satisfaction, but it's neither here nor there. If you want to check out my books, then you can click the link in the description. Just don't buy Ego Death yet. But sure, I would have had more money saved up to weather the storm that I eventually went through of living in my car and just everything that entailed. But truthfully, all I would have been doing was delaying the inevitable. Because what I sort of realized was you can have as much money saved up as you want, but if your income dries up, it's only a matter of time before you go broke. If your income is fucked up, then it's only a matter of time before you go broke. Your income has to be there. People talk about passive income and all that. I have passive income from my aforementioned YouTube channel, the one with 100K plus subscribers. But ultimately, it is fractional compared to what I used to make when I was actively uploading. Except for the fact that in recent months, a big part of the reason why I walked away from that channel was because my income declined again. Because my views declined again. And what changed? What caused the decline in viewership in both of those cases? Really, the answer is that YouTube is one of those things that simply has a shelf life. And because I uploaded so often, I was uploading 5, 6, 7 times a week, sometimes multiple times a day for certain seasons of my life, I simply went through the shelf life a lot quicker. And I'm saying that to say that just like with the girl, just like with Bart and Lance, the dogs that I had, just like with Katrina, there wasn't really much I could do. I did everything I could. I tried hiring editors. I tried shifting my content strategy. I even tried playing into what I know people wanted to hear from me, which at times was bordering on what I actually believed. And after about half a week to 1 full week of just experimenting with that just to see if it would work, it gave me the ick. And I was like, bro, I got to step away from this right here. This is not it. I got to find another way. And eventually I realized that YouTube is a game where you either have to be willing to go without, meaning you don't do it for the money. You do it because you have some shit you need to say. This video right here isn't going to make me any money anytime soon, but I have some shit I need to get off my chest. So I'm making it. I could be watching Netflix right now and they would yield the same outcome, but I need to make this video right now. Or you have to be the kind of person who is willing to simply play the game. In other words, you have to make the content that people want to watch, even if it doesn't align with your morals and values. And that is something that I am not willing to do. There are a lot of motherfuckers out there, though, who are willing to do it. And you have to be very, very cautious of those people, not just on YouTube, but in real life. Because those people, they will do whatever they can to separate you from your money. Okay, those people who don't even respect themselves enough to stand by what they believe in or to stand far away from what they don't believe in, rest assured that they don't respect you either. If they don't respect themselves, they sure as hell do not respect you. But that's a different discussion for a different day. I can go on and on about YouTube. The point of this video is a lot of times, especially if you're someone like me, you feel the need to control things, especially in retrospect. Because if you can identify where you went wrong, you can change the variables such that you yield a different outcome. But what I've come to realize is it's not always that simple. Sometimes there are variables that you don't have influence over. You don't have influence over the neighbors not liking the sound of dogs barking, even though that's what the fuck dogs do. You don't have influence over a natural disaster crossing paths with your home and everything in it. You don't have influence over someone who you feel is just built in a fucking lab to be with you and vice versa, having had their heart broken right before meeting you. You don't have control over people just suddenly deciding they're not into self-improvement content anymore, or they're not into these culture shock videos anymore. You don't get to control that. You can only react to that. And again, I've kind of come to realize that over time, things do have a way of working themselves out. For example, eventually we got another pet, and that pet is still with my family, and she is thriving and doing well. They even got another pet recently, 2 black cats that are amazing, and they'll never fill the void left by losing Bart and Lance, but fuck, I'm really glad that I got the chance to experience having at least one of the cats. I haven't met the other one yet because they got the cat after I left, but I'm grateful that I got the chance to be with that cat. I'm grateful that I grew up in Dallas. I'm grateful that I ended up with my girlfriend. I'm grateful that, I'm not gonna lie, I haven't really figured out the end game with the YouTube thing yet. I'm kind of just creating and seeing what the fuck happens. But I'm grateful for whatever is going to transpire as a result of me being effectively weeded out of the YouTube algorithm bullshit game. I'm grateful for whatever's coming because I know whatever it is, it will be better than what I experienced in the past. You do have influence over your life with your decisions, but even though you get the opportunity to choose, you don't always get the opportunity to pick the options that you get to choose from. And so this is just my roundabout, long-winded, therapeutic, cathartic way of saying, give yourself some grace. Maybe it wasn't your fault. There were factors that you could have influenced, you could have controlled, but the fact that that person broke your heart, the fact that you went broke, you learn from the mistakes that you made while also understanding that some shit is simply beyond your realm of influence. This doesn't mean that you're a victim. It doesn't mean that you are assuming the victim position. In fact, it's the exact opposite. It means that you're empowering yourself to control the variables that you can control and double down on those things.